What I think he has is quite big pictures of the kind of world he would like the music to be in. He knows where this music belongs, which kind of world he wants to evoke with it.
But there's no denying that Warhol helped to shape Bowie's visually acute and curiously distant take on the mechanics of pop stardom. As a member of a rival glam rock act, Roxy Music, back in the early 1970s, producer Brian Eno used to appear on the same bill as Bowie.
The aspect of elaborate stage shows, the idea of creating persona, of creating yourself as an art object. Now, those things, for instance, let alone talking about music, but those things are, I think, very traceable to him. Of course, he wasn't the only person who did it, but he was probably the person who did it better than anybody else. And it's sort of what everybody does now and has done ever since.
As well as launching Lou Reed's solo career, Bowie also directed another of his American heroes, Iggy Pop, onto the road to success. And he did this by more than just a cunning arrangement of sound and vision. Brian Eno again.
Musically, I think one of the things he did was he got people interested in a certain kind of complexity in songwriting. He's actually a very complex songwriter. His songs take strange turns and go through very peculiar mood shifts. Instead of the song being a little slice of a feeling, it was a little examination of a group of feelings. You have to remember the context of the time was late 60s and early 70s of a sense of, you know, we are sincere artists and we sort of don't look at the audience and we're so into our music that we can't be bothered about anything else. And both Bowie and Roxy turned that completely on its head. It was like, we're showmen, ha-ha. We're showmen, but actually that's a joke as well. We're not really, you know. So there were lots of layers of irony and sort of references and then negations of those references. And both bands were quite consciously looking at the whole history of popular music as our palette. So we didn't feel confined by styles, actually. We didn't feel that we had to belong to now, as it were. We felt that we could use whatever had been made available for the previous 40 years.
As the rest of the world was getting into punk, Bowie headed off in another direction entirely, to Berlin, where he recorded Low, the first of several collaborations with Brian Eno.
When he was doing the station-to-station tour in America, he'd been listening to discrete music, which was arguably the first ambient record, actually. And this was the music he'd play all the time when he wasn't actually working, you know. And he'd made a decision that he wanted to be more involved in the textural aspects of the music, the landscape aspects, the scene setting. So he quite consciously thought, I'm going to make this hybrid of kind of New York urban black music and this European textural electronic thing that I represented. And I think it was a very successful combination. I still like that record a lot.
Yeah, me too.
I like it because everything is so concise on it. It makes its point and then goes on and does something else.
Bowie has proved himself a master at moving on. Despite the media brouhaha and jibes about pretentiousness, Bowie's interest in fine art has caused far less damage to his reputation than the records he put out in the 1980s. Did he simply lose his way, or was he following the crowd? Brian Eno.
Was anyone good in the 80s? I don't think music was that interesting in the 80s, really. I don't think I was. I don't think he was. I don't think there was very much going on that I would be able to say, yes, this was really where it was happening.
That's a very interesting response, because, of course, another, not exactly criticism, but another thing that's often said about David Bowie is that he is, in a way, a chameleon. If you put him in an interesting environment, he'll soak up interesting things and reflect them. And from what you're saying then, put him in a less interesting environment and the whole thing falls apart.
That's probably true. I think he is kind of a mirror to things. Well, a lens, I'd say, that maybe there wasn't a lot to focus in the 80s. He's got a great sense of humour. and he's a very good mimic. In fact, the first day I arrived to work on the Low record, he said, "I've written this song called Always Crashing in the Same Car," and in fact I gave it to Bob Dylan to sing. He said, "Do you want to hear it?" I said, "Sure." He played it to me, and I thought, that's fantastic. It's the best thing Dylan's done for years. And I said, that's really great. Bob Dylan at his best, you know. And it turned out to be David, of course, who can do a perfect Bob Dylan, a superb John Lennon.
Oh, when we're rehearsing, that's some of my greatest joys. Because the performances on stage, you know, they're the shows and they're great, but the moments of these rehearsals and all of a sudden he'll start singing like Robert Goulet or singing Johnny Cash, or he does a great Ethel Merman that nobody knows. It's just unbelievable.
It takes more than superb mimicry, of course, to make great albums. And although Bowie has received a better press in the 90s than he did in the 80s, his new music doesn't linger in the memory as indelibly as the older stuff. Brian Eno, who produced his last album Outside, thinks he knows why.
I think he needs a little bit more studio discipline, actually. He's almost at a peak, in a way, of both lyric writing and picture making in music. If there's a problem, it's that it's not filtered well enough. It all comes out together. It's too dense. I often think I would love to remix the last record we made together. I think there's some fantastic stuff on there. I think there's some of the best stuff he's ever done. And I think it's weighed down by too much baggage.
Bowie probably has less impact than he once did, and he certainly sells fewer records. But is this extra baggage he carries nowadays just another kind of middle-aged spread? Some argue that he's been undone by his dilettante-ish impulse to explore fine art, popular culture, unpopular culture, and most recently the internet, where his forthcoming single Telling Lies received its premiere. Those closest to him, though, feel that Bowie is again ahead of the game, and that in his own peculiar intuitive fashion, he's telling it like it is.
As I keep saying to people, I don't think music is the centre of the cultural conversation any longer, as it used to be. And arguably there isn't one centre to it, you know. In the same way as I was saying that we can now all navigate through complicated interdisciplinary fields, maybe that's what the conversation is doing as well. It certainly isn't.
And that's what David Bowie is doing.
Yes, that's right.
Telling lies.
I actually feel it's like a regeneration and a revitalization for him.
Telling lies.
I think he still very much has his finger on the pulse.
Telling lies.
He has a very good 5-10 years coming up, cutting into the 21st century.
Telling lies.
Telling Lies from David Bowie's new album Earthling, ending this evening's Kaleidoscope feature. The programme was presented by Robert Sandall and produced by Mohit Bakaya.